Welcome to session 11 of the 19th Annual Northwest Interlibrary Loan and Resource Sharing Conference. Today's date is September 11th, 2020. This session is titled The ILL Response to COVID-19, a panel discussion, and will be presented by myself, Miriam Wnuk, Paula Martin, Johannes Loetz, Manisha Khetarpal, who I probably said that wrong, and Bullis. This session is being recorded with permission from the presenters. They retain the copyright to the information they are presenting and may request its removal from public viewing in the future by written request to the NWIL committee chairman. However, at this time, it is planned that recordings will be available in the next several weeks as committee members are able to add captions. Attendees will be notified when recordings are available. If you have a question during this session, please use the chat function and direct the question to Virginia Wolf. Actually, in this case, I have renamed myself NWIL Miriam Wnuk. And I will pose these questions to the presenters at the end of the presentation. Assuming there is time, we will open the floor to discussion. By unmuting and talking, you are agreeing to being recorded. All attendees should be muted and have their videos off at this time. The door prize keyword will be revealed between the presentation and Q&A time. The link for the door prize form is on the digital schedule and will be placed in the chat. On that note, I turn the session over to myself as the first panelist. As I mentioned, my name is Miriam Wnuk and I worked at City U of Seattle in downtown Seattle. Before I move too far into the presentation, I would like to do a poll asking everyone where you are in reopening or your new normal. We're allowing multiple choice as maybe it's a mix for you. I'll leave that up for a few moments here. I think I can keep talking. Now, my primary role at City U was as the sole library support person. I was in charge of interlibrary loan, cataloging, institutional repository metadata, circulation, the copyright expert, and customer service related issues outside of deep reference. My daily commute included a 45-minute bus ride from the suburb of Woodinville, where I am presenting from today, and a 15-minute walk from my downtown bus stop to campus. The picture here is of a protest at my evening bus stop, which was not an uncommon occurrence over the last few years. Before the pandemic started, it was ski season, and my boyfriend just recovered from a month-long wrist injury. So we went on a 4-day ski trip to Whistler, BC, back in the days when we could go over the Canadian border, where I had my first trip to Tim Hortons. Good coffee, but I've had better donuts. And we have 164 responses, so I'm going to end the poll there and share the results. And it looks like most of you are currently working remotely, but some people are on site. And some of you, 33% of you are also on modified on-site schedules. We also have, we're open to staff and students, but not the public. And I appreciate that a couple of you said, we never left, students never left, help me. I really do. I thought it would be a humorous answer, but I also wanted to point out that there are those of us who just never left our campuses. Continuing. First, a disclaimer. The dates I'm about to share are as they happened. We now know that these may not be correct. So, living in Greater Seattle, we were the first area in the USA to know it had COVID circulating. On January 20th, the first confirmed case of COVID was identified, and the person was hospitalized in Everett, Washington, about a 30-minute drive north of Seattle. I am once removed from several people who work at this hospital. On February 19th, the first cluster was identified at the Life Care Center in Kirkland, Washington, which is less than 5 minutes from my home. But they still had not identified community spread factors. On February 28th was the first confirmed death from the Life Care Center. I was crossing the border into Canada when the news broke. When I returned from my short vacation, Seattle had changed. The major technology companies such as Amazon and Microsoft were closing their campuses to everyone but essential staff. One of my former student employees had just started working for Amazon and was still going to work until there was a confirmed case in her building. The grocery store shelves were nearly bare, as you can see from this picture. And this picture in particular is from the baking aisle. As we all know, everyone was making bread and cookies. Students and employees at CityU with weakened immune systems were encouraged to work remotely starting March 2nd, but I was still taking the bus several times a week, working a modified schedule on campus. We weren't wearing masks, but we were trying to keep our distance. The library had placed CDC-created signs around the library asking people to stay home if they were sick and to cover their coughs. We provided Lysol wipes with every checkout and upon request. On March 5th, the North Shore School District closed to physical education. It was the first in the USA to do so. This is the school district where I live and my father works. But the world and work kept going. March 2nd to 13th, I continued to work on campus. During that time, I started evaluating all book requests even more critically, but I did order books. My school was showing no signs that it would close down 100% and that someone would always be on campus. However, our dean had campus facilities lock the door between our Starbucks. Yes, there's a Starbucks between our library and it. However, the school president wasn't happy, but it kept the general public out of the library. We felt a little bit safer. I continued to work a physical schedule on campus until March 13th. However, the bus was getting empty in Erie. This picture shown is from my last bus ride. The driver was wearing a thick winter buff, even though we were not being told to wear masks. On that particular ride, there were 3 other people on board, one of them a coworker. That Friday evening, an email was sent out saying we could work remotely if you could create a work plan and submit it to your supervisor and human resources. My dean was fine if the entire library worked remotely. However, the school president wanted at least one person on campus at all times because we weren't actually closed. A schedule was made. However, the following week, March 16th, someone from IT had second-degree contact with someone who tested positive. Campus was closed for cleaning. It has not reopened. The picture on the lower right is of my work from home setup. My boyfriend and I work back to back. He has 3 work screens and I have 2. In many ways, it's better than my work setup, except I have no physical access to anything. Starting on March 16th, my first thing when I logged into work was damage report. I felt like Picard every morning. Copyright notice. I do not own the copyright of the Picard meme. It's taken from Google. It's been shared up to a million times. Every day I saw another library close and another resource struggle. Speaking of Natalie's Loeg's presentation from earlier today, I loved when she created the Google Sheet for tracking libraries at first. That was a fantastic resource. I had a few things going on for me. My boyfriend got me a Keurig because he knew I needed coffee through all of this, and we didn't have a coffee maker. It is officially the best COVID purchase ever for me. Unlike some, I had a VPN access to work and therefore access to Iliad. I was seeing many people having issues as they suddenly had to work remotely, and Iliad is IP dependent. And 3, I figured out a good way to show my lending status early, 20 days for books. Turns out I wasn't the only one, and OCLC adopted the practice. Some of my issues. I had books arriving for 3 different patrons, and I had to find out, do they still want them? Do they want scans? I ended up purchasing one item as an ebook, one person took scans, and another accepted mailing. Luckily, an academic technology person was visiting campus, and with a long phone call, I was able to process these items by the end of March. Issue number 2, everything took longer to do. Finding someone who can scan a chapter, finding an older article, communicating with students. Projects started in late February, such as a copyright guide for faculty, were sidelined for survival mode. My third issue, the VPN died in mid-May and life got difficult. I had to rebuild my work environment on my home computer. Iliad was placed on a virtual machine, but if the electricity died and my home IP changed, the school had to update that information. And issue number 4 was, and you are all living it right now, NWIL had to be transitioned from being in person to going virtual, and we had to figure out how to do that. So finding my new normal. By June, I had a collection of masks. That is one of my favorite ones that you see in the picture here. Some libraries were reopening. I had students mailing their books back and mailing their books and their ILL back. In mid-June, which is pictured there, I made my first trip back to campus. I processed returned ILLs, mailed books to libraries that were open. This is where I get to thank OCLC for the libraries.oclc.org website, and scanned book chapters for the beginning of our summer quarter for instructors to put into their course modules. When handling lending returns, I wore a mask and gloves. But for returning borrowed items, I opted to wear a mask and wash my hands afterwards. To help the library on the other side, I wrote a last touched by humans with the date on it, date on a Post-it, and affixed it to the cover. This allows the receiving library to decide if the book has been quarantined long enough via the mail. This was important because part of my policies was to lend from libraries as close to my home as possible. So some books came from libraries where it was a one day for things to be mailed to them. And if they happened to be open and processing items, maybe it wasn't long enough to be quarantined. But I may have also be sending something to the East Coast or California, and it is a long enough quarantine. In mid-July, I made a second trip to campus to process ILL book borrowing requests that had arrived for my students, process a backlog of serials, and begin planning for the possibility of weekly trips in August to expand to regular physical ILL processing. However, on July 30th, due to low international student enrollment, every department at CityU was forced to lay off 2 FTE. I was one of 2 in the library. The other was a reference instruction librarian. At this time, CityU of Seattle has no library-skilled support staff. The copyright guide project mentioned earlier was mostly completed the day before. Now I will turn the presentation over to Johannes Loetz in Colorado.
Hello, my name is Johannes Loetz, and I am a library assistant at the Longmont Public Library, where I've been working for the past 18 years. Over those years, I've been part of the circulation desk, the children's and teens, jacketing, and now I'm in the adult services department where I manage interlibrary loan, and I'm a department of one. Our library is mid-sized with a service population of about 90,000, consisting of a healthy generational cross-section of folks, 25% of which are Hispanic. If you remember way back, there was a time before COVID, although it feels like a million years ago. For example, this is our ILL office sometime in January, and although it's a little hard to see, that's me on my way to work back in December. So it seems like a different world. Regardless, our regular duties included substantial face time with the public, taking requests for reference, readers advisory, helping users with their iPads, and so forth. A large part of our investment of time was put into in-person programs as well. And I co-hosted a English-Spanish conversation group and a Books and Brews event where we, and it sounds kind of reckless now, but we would pack 25 or so people into a small space and discuss books and beer, all without masks. I processed about 50 ILL requests a month, although that may sound like a quaint number to some of you, but I enjoyed it a great deal. And back then, we also had Sanity, which was pretty swell. But then COVID cometh. Now I have to point out that the photograph in the background was used in a piece in our local paper by our museum's curator, which shows a group of nurses in Longmont in 1918 during the influenza epidemic. His article was impactful because he pointed out that, you know what, we've actually been here before. We've struggled through it and we came out on the other side and we're going to be okay. So still, COVID did come knocking and the library was closed to the public on March 13th. And all services ground to an immediate halt. And we were also closed to staff as well. So there was nobody in the building. It was a complete lockout. About 50% of our staff was able to work remotely to some degree. And that includes myself. I was able to work remotely and I could get articles back and forth. But of course, all physical materials, there was no movement. Those who could not work remotely were still paid their regular salaries with emergency COVID funds from the city. Communication between the city government and library staff never stopped, but it was chaotic. It changed frequently, and it both contributed to and alleviated anxiety, depending on the day. The only communication with the public was through Facebook and the occasional email. I continued to get a trickle of ILL requests for articles, but the response rate was a little bit spotty, and I let people know that we were suspending ILL service until conditions improved, which for us was a couple of months. While we were in the thick of it, online programs started to roll out in early April, including the English-Spanish conversation group, Readers Advisory on Facebook, and a virtual summer reading program for the Children's and Teens Department. We began our curbside delivery service on May 26th. And especially during this time, anxiety ran pretty high due to some surrounding libraries experiencing furloughs. We reopened our building to the public with limited services and hours on July 23rd. While ILL service isn't receiving the volume it usually does, delivery has resumed, and other than making sure the items that we receive go into quarantine, which we do for 3 days, and using gloves to handle the materials, we were mostly back to where we were. After Labor Day, we expanded and adjusted our hours. We were able to increase the number of staff in the building. A positive side effect for us has been that many of our programs have become so popular that participants have been asking us to keep them going even when we go back to normal. We're not entirely sure what we'll be able to keep, but the current plan is essentially to go back to the way things were to the extent possible. But that hinges on higher authorities, which in turn hinges on the decisions people make in terms of spreading or containing the disease. So will there be more commuting remotely in our future? Will sanity make a comeback? Stay tuned, because we're not sure really what's going to happen, but we're hopeful. Thank you very much for listening, and stay safe, everyone.
Okay, so my name's Lori Bullis, and I work with the Hammersley Library at Western Oregon University, which is about 30 miles west of the capital of Oregon, in Salem. So we're located in Polk County, and resource sharing, which includes Interlibrary Loan Summit, which is the Northwest Consortium of libraries, and also distance providing services to our distance ed students is really what my primary responsibilities. And then, of course, other duties as assigned, as we all know. So anyway, I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science from Oregon State University, go Beavs, in housing design. And then I completed all but my master's thesis in family resource management with a minor in cultural anthropology from Oregon State as well. In addition to being the resource sharing extraordinaire, I'm also trained as a first responder with the Wnuk Community Emergency Response Team, also known as an acronym of CERT. I also resumed the program here in Benton County, which carries on today. Hello, next slide. There you go. Okay. So pre-COVID-19, our library was a very busy, happening, humming place. As you can see, we have a cafe, which is very popular on campus. We have a small learning commons, which is also very popular. Those white tables that you see there in the middle, those actually are whiteboard tables, and our students love them. And so, and part of this is that to get to work every day, I have a 40-minute one-way commute from Corvallis to Monmouth. We have a new dean, Shell, who came from University of Washington, and just love her. Thank you, UW. And we hired a new academic innovation director from the East Coast because our new vice provost is determined and was determined and needs to be determined now to normalize online learning at Western. Next slide, please. So COVID begins. When COVID surfaced in China, then Everett, being a first responder, I monitored the situation closely. It all kicked in for me. In our late February all library staff meeting about COVID was being discussed, and many supervisors and staff believed that administration would tell us what we needed to do and what the plan was. And as gently as I could, and patiently as I could, I advised them that actually it was going to be administration coming to us to tell them what our plan was, because we know best what's going to work for us as a library and what our patrons' needs are at the time. So we had to work that out. And, you know, we were thinking at the time, well, God forbid, if we had to close, then we could deal with it. But we needed to have a plan in place. Planning is so important. And, well, March hit and COVID did too, and we were closed, and we've been flying by the seat of our pants ever since. I think I have never, ever been so busy at work doing resource sharing and all the other things that are related to COVID in addition to that, even though I'm teleworking now from my home, which you can see is above my garage and is every activity in our house that doesn't fit someplace else. So anyway, the Governor Brown, she issued the stay-at-home executive orders. We did have initial layoffs at our University of Classified staff. I did continue the electronic resource sharing for interlibrary loan, but all other hard copy borrowing through Summit and interlibrary loan stopped. It just completely stopped. We did do some initial curbside lending, which was extremely busy, trying to maintain social distancing, trying to get people to behave and sanitize was next to impossible. So our staff masked up and gloved up. So since then, since the middle of the term, we are no longer doing curbside service. We are mailing items to our patrons as they need them. We have resumed since then Summit borrowing and lending, but we're only getting the courier twice a week. In fact, this week, though, because of the fires, we're not doing courier service at all. It's just not a responsible thing to do. Based on the Realm study, which was mentioned earlier, well, initially we were just doing 3 days, and then with the new test results that came out, it was 4 days, and now the new test results have come out, and so we're going to be having a conversation about quarantining items 7 days, because we want to protect the staff and the students and our faculty and everybody else. We don't want to be spreading COVID around. Our new academic innovation director at this point had not been authorized to leave his state on the East Coast, and actually to date he's still on the East Coast because he hasn't been authorized to leave the state. So he's doing all of his work and getting online classes up and running from the East Coast. At home, though, you know, because I actually wound up being furloughed 20%, we took on some additional projects because I needed to keep busy. Otherwise, I was going to go stir crazy and worry about a lot of things I didn't need to worry about. So much to my husband's, you know, grimacing face there that you can see, we completed the fence in the backyard and the garden's going, and I actually still have a few more projects going on right now. Now, Western itself, with all this COVID happening, and also the drop in student enrollment, is now in what we call retrenchment, which is, I mean, we're financially in the bucket. And it's a very scary time, and we're working on it. So next slide, please. Currently, Polk and Benton counties have met the governor's matrix to open up at phase 2. Our library remains closed and continues to operate with extreme limited staffing. So basically it's one staff person and 2 student employees to manage anything that needs to be done on site. We continue to wait word on whether we've been awarded any of the MLIS CARES Act grant money. Apparently they're behind because they were inundated with applications. I continue to telework even though, because Summit has resumed, I am on campus 1 day a week to process Summit borrowing and returns. ILL electronic services continue. We continue to quarantine all deliveries and all returns. Anyway, I am back actually to full-time status working. I do anticipate to be furloughed again before the end of the year because of the budget cuts. And actually, our human resources department is talking about more layoffs, and they also are talking about laying off tenured faculty because of the retrenchment, the budget issues. Next slide, please. So what's next for us? We continue to scramble due to the ever-changing events, which, as you can see right now, out of the fires, we've got more things we got to work on. Most library staff continue teleworking from home. We're going to reopen in the fall, actually, is the plan, but it's not going to be to the whole community. We're going to be just for Western Oregon University people. Our initial occupancy is going to be 35 people at the most, and depending on how well everybody behaves about wearing masks and social distancing, we may increase the number of people that are allowed in the library, but if they don't behave, we're going to have to restrict that. And thankfully, we have a great campus public safety who's going to be able to help monitor that. We also will be doing some form of contact tracing. But exactly what that's going to be right now, I'm not certain because, well, I've been out of the office all week because of the fires. Also, what's going on right now is we've been planning our library's 20th anniversary. And this is going to be a virtual event actually in a week from Sunday. And how that's going to work at the moment with the library and campus being closed, I'm not certain. But so far, we're moving right along with it. And hopefully we can pull it off. I expect the interlibrary loan hard copy borrowing to resume by the time the term starts, if not the week before. I expect us to continue with just 2 days a week of courier service delivery. I expect us to continue the quarantining and expanding that to a 7-day quarantine to ensure the health and safety of our library staff and patrons. All of our sporting events for the fall have been canceled. And we continue to be in retrenchment, and we'll say, but the plus side is that we have all scrambled. Everybody in our library has scrambled. We have met the needs of our patrons, and I have to say I'm really proud of that. It's been a huge challenge trying to adjust to being helpless and being powerless and not having any control over a lot of things. But thankfully, we have a great dean in Shell Batchelor, and she's pulled us all together, and I think we're all good to go. So I think that's everything. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, I'll be around. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Oh, come on. Next up, we have Paula.
Thanks, Miriam. Hi, everybody. So this first photo is in happier times when we had an open house in University of Oregon, Portland, where I work, a celebration of 10 years of them being in that building. And next slide. So I am the Access Services Coordinator for UO Portland Library, one of 6 branch libraries for the University of Oregon. I am responsible for providing resources through the UO libraries, ILL and Summit, and getting those materials to our faculty, staff, and students. I also hire and train student workers among the tasks. And this is where I work, in the iconic White Stag block on 70 Northwest Cooch in Portland. The buildings were renovated in 2009, creating spaces supporting 4 master's school programs for the School of Law, School of Design, School of Journalism, and the School of Business. And at one time we had about 500 students coming in and out. The building has 5 floors and leased spaces to Airbnb offices and MWA architects. The building was always bustling, full of activity, with event space that was used for our own activities and also rented out for community usage. The small corner picture is where our library entrance is on the first floor, and the book drop, which is usually out front. Thank you. So like before COVID, you would come in our front doors and our receptionist desk is right there, and the duck store right behind, and we put a cool little sign there because the library is all the way to the back. You go past the student lounge and the elevators going up, and other event spaces to our common area in front of our library. And then when you come in the library, we have our circulation desk, our scanner, copier, lots of different types of study spaces updated in the last couple of years, and a virtually soundproof booth that we're very proud of. We also had coffee service and a massage chair. At that time, we were open to the public and had 2 computer stations devoted to community use. Our lower level holds most of our collection, and we have study spaces down there, and most of our collections down there. And then we have a large study room available for reservation. And we had a class meeting in that room weekly for fall and winter terms. So winter quarter, we had 5 graduate students working for us, 1 law student, 2 sports product management students, and 2 library grad students. Since we serve grad students, we only hire them, grad students, but they don't have to attend UO. And they can continue to work for us 1 quarter after graduation. So yes, this slide shows life during COVID. Since University of Oregon Portland closed late March, the building has been virtually empty, with only a few people coming in with permission, including our building manager and assistant, our security personnel, our tech personnel, our UO community officer, our security, I think I already said that, and my library manager and myself, and 2 student workers. We were forced online, of course, due to the governor's mandate. And while still in a bit of shock, we quickly worked with staff, faculty, and students to continue library services for continued classwork during spring term, which included processing materials, providing scanning jobs, and mailing of materials to be picked up. I was, at the time when our building closed, I was approved to work remotely, and my manager continued to come in a couple days to make things work smoothly. And you can see in this slide that the book drop was moved. So if you came in through those red front doors, it's right inside there. So patrons can come in and pick up materials. They have to have ID and answer COVID-related questions, which we have communicated to them by email prior to coming in. But just to give you the feel of emptiness, the plants pictured there, that's right outside our library entrance, which usually has displays or people walking around, and now our plants from the whole building are being housed there. We quickly put in cleaning practices and provided projects for our 2 students working on site. And I also have 1 student who is working remotely. The other 2 students after spring term, they had fulfilled their 1 quarter after graduation, so they had moved on. And so these are 2 of my students working here, and we are very thankful for them. They have helped a great deal with all our mailing and scanning and keeping operations going. So next slide. So getting ready for reentry. Well, currently Multnomah County, which has the highest population of Oregon, is in phase 1 and doesn't look like it's going to get out of it real soon. But University of Oregon Portland has had to keep online for fall term. And then on August 26th, the main campus decided to also do fall classes online. So of course, as Lori stated, there will be no fall sports or large activities, which we do in person, open houses, orientations. So meanwhile, we are doing orientations online, and we still have students registered. We're letting them know about our ILL and sharing resource services, and we're getting our spaces ready. So this is a few of our pictures here of our spaces that my manager has worked, Michael Brown, by the way, has worked really hard in getting things set up, and our new cleaning station and everything. And little pandemic humor, the other day, I was walking out of our workroom to turn on the overhead library lights, and it's very dark in there. And I saw someone walking towards me and just had a little bit of a heart attack before I realized it was my reflection in the newly placed plexiglass shields on our circulation desk. So yeah. And then next slide. So these are just a few links if you're interested in the White Stag building. It's got quite an architectural history and pretty neat building. I included a picture here of our lovely cherry trees, which line the waterfront every spring. I took this pre-COVID, and it shows our buildings in the background. And my hope is to leave you with hope, because we have to believe in hope. And when we reopen, if you're in the neighborhood, please come to visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. I took a moment to turn that slide because I was actually laughing. I'm sorry about the plexiglass issue. So I'll turn it over to Manisha, and I'm going to do the little comment of we are really cutting close on time today. We had a lot to say. So go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. So my name is Manisha. I work with the Muscogees Cultural College Library. Muscogees Cultural College Library in Alberta, Canada. Muscogees is a reservation, and I'd like to introduce myself in Plains Cree. Manisha Nitsikasun, Notavi Balwant Nigavi Bimla, Nita Toskan Masnaikan Kamek, Muscogees Cultural College. Mistahi, Ninanas Kamon, Pematasovin, Emi Kosian, hi. Next slide, please. I introduced myself in Plains Cree because I work for a cultural college and Indigenous languages are important. And language revitalization is the key. Our college has 350 full-time students. And in my introduction, the way in Plains Cree people introduce themselves is by territory, by place. Muskwa means bear, Watches is hills in Plains Cree Y dialect. So Muscogees means Bear Hills. We are located in Four Trailers. The college was established more than 45 years ago. We have 350 full-time students, and the programs we offer are in the area of Cree language, Indigenous social work, bachelor's degree, an education bachelor's degree program, business, and many adult upgrading. Our college was established more than 45 years ago, and we started recording elders. And I'm mentioning elders recordings over here because that is part of our collection, which is digitized both in the English language as well as the transcript is available in standard Roman orthography as well as in the Cree syllabics. Next slide, please. So life before COVID was, we're a small library, so we depend a lot on borrowing services, and it involved face-to-face interaction. Nothing was online. And during the beginning of COVID, it's important, please note, COVID was brought into the Muscogees community from Ottawa. Ottawa is the capital of Canada, by a community member. And this community member was attending a conference in Ottawa. So COVID was an uninvited guest in Muscogees, and we had curfew in the community and nobody could enter the community. I am from India, but I work with First Nations, and I have been in Canada for more than 20 years. And our college faced an issue about offering face-to-face practicum and placements for our students, which was not possible. So hence they created a micro-learning program to provide practicum opportunities to our students. My role also involved conducting research, and we conducted a research survey about internet access and the devices which are available to our students. We are working in a remote area and internet access is not so good. So our college invested in infrastructure, and we have a cell tower installed on top of our college. So the good point of COVID is that it is helping us develop infrastructure in remote and rural areas, and especially on a reservation or reserves. And our survey revealed that all students had cell phones and they were using Facebook. So we launched a micro-learning program, and one of the programs within this micro-learning where our students would coordinate with presenters, and all training was offered via Zoom. We used Zoom in spite of Zoom bombings because everybody was using Zoom. We launched Virtual Lunch and Learn Cree, which is the Indigenous language program based on master apprentice model. And our instructor was from a different province. And this week was our 21st session, which we hosted. So online programming was really consistent. In March, our library launched reference services by chat from 7 to 9 p.m. And this really works very well. Next slide, please. So now in the middle of March, the beginning of reopening phases, the library's role focused on information literacy and training workshops. So we offered many training workshops, especially how to use the video conferencing tools, such as Zoom and Google Meet. Our first goal was to train all our staff, because we have elders, resident elders and knowledge keepers. and they all are not, they never use technology. We are a face-to-face community. So my role was in providing training opportunities, sitting one-on-one, creating tutorials, and making sure that the elders are able, they have the equipment and they're able to log into Zoom or Google Meet. To our students, the access to our library collection, we focused on digital content, especially free content. And during this time, there were many free video films, and lots of products were available free, especially the National Film Board films from in Canada. And we used those films to broadcast and just provide access even to the families of our students to access the digital recordings as much as possible. And a little bit of background work was doing a lot of documentation updates, such as updating the Dean's Council terms of reference and working together with my team to create a business continuity plan. And this involved collapsing the Dean's Council, and I'm one of the deans. I'm the Dean of Library and Information Services. And if the Dean's Council was collapsed, I would still have job security, and my job would be of working as a researcher and a grant writer. Next slide, please. And a reopening plan. This is my library where I work. The space, we had to change the space. We always had round tables because in Plains Cree culture, you want to invite and have a conversation. And now we have square tables on wheels. Everything is on wheels. And you can see the books are there on the wall over here. And these are pictures of our elders. And this is also a picture of our elders here in this photograph. So library space and tables, they had to comply with the physical distance guidelines. I also created a manual about how to write for Indigenous students and created tutorials about APA 7th edition. I'm still assisting our elders and knowledge keepers during our Cultural Teachings Week, which was hosted in August. Our library gave away more than 30,000 books to the community, to the families. And we have been giving away books every year in the summer. We host a barbecue to the community. These are children's books, adult books, youth books. And the community just comes and we have a barbecue. And this year we partnered with Samson Community Wellness and hosted a drive-through barbecue. The books still went in the community, but we did not touch the books. They were kept in boxes. Boxes were made. People would go through the drive-through barbecue, pick up their barbecue for the family, the burger and buns and all the goodies, and their box of books. And my role shifted in August because we were getting ready for online learning to use as many open education resources and to help our instructors. So I was doing a lot of content curation and offering teaching and learning services for our instructors. So this is a picture, library reopening. As you can see, our instructor is wearing a mask. The classroom, this is one of the classrooms. It's not just the library reopening, it's the college changing together too. Tables, separate tables with physical distancing in place. And this is a picture from our culture camp, which was hosted, the beading culture camp. One of the activities during the culture camp was learning how to make edgings in different type of beading. And this slide is also of the culture camp, which was hosted in August. Our elder, Mr. Jerry Saddleback, is teaching us how to set up a teepee. Teepee, usually it's the woman who sets up the teepee, and the people involved, some of the participants are just sitting down on the grass. This is the front side of our college. Last slide, please. How will it change or will it stay the same? I'm an immigrant in Canada. I'm from India. I've been in Canada for more than 20 years. So all this chaos really does not have much impact on me. Second, I'm a visible minority, a person of color. Life has always been in chaos. So COVID or no COVID, it really makes no difference. The show must go on. I think personally, I'm really enjoying spending more time with my family. I've gone for a walk every day in the past 5 months. Library service will still continue by chat 7 to 9 p.m. My role now shifted from instructor to becoming from shifted from supporting instructors to becoming an instructor myself. I'm teaching 4 courses and I'm really enjoying it. The 4 courses I'm teaching are personal academic skills, research and writing, sociology course 2560, social stratification and inequalities. And I'm also doing computer labs for Indigenous Studies 1911. It's being done virtually. All these classes I'm teaching are being taught online, and they're easy for me to teach online. I really enjoy it because in 2015 I was trained. I was heading the Open Education Initiative here in Massachusetts. And the final point I want to share is the micro-learning program, which we started because of COVID, which helped me become so comfortable with Zoom and all the stuff. And I posted the link in the chat. We have offered more than 150 sessions in the past 5 months, which started as creating workplace opportunities for our students. And we have trained more than 6,000 people all across the world. And we have only 2 goals. 1, learn knowledge and skills, which can be applied across a variety of settings. And 2 is networking, because small projects are still available by networking. And I'm developing 3 programs right now, which will be offered through continuing education, digital communications program, online course development and delivery program, and Indigenous knowledge digital preservation program. I just wanted to illustrate that as a library, we don't have much money. We are located on the reserve. I run my library on a 0 budget. I'm a solo librarian, but I wanted to share that, you know what, learn as many skills and see what you can do in your organization. There will always be an opportunity for growth. And if your organization does not value you, one door closes and another door opens, you have these skills. I'm diversifying myself by focusing on instruction so that, if I'm laid off, you have to be prepared for anything in life, then I can definitely work as a contract instructor with any organization. Thank you so much for listening and for giving me this opportunity. And I'd like to say thank you to all the 223 attendees in this session and my fellow presenters, and really honor Miss Miriam in Cree, Miss Tahi, Nina Baskamon, Pimatisowen, Emi Kosian. Hi. Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha. I wanted to close really quickly by saying we've really run out our time today, but if you have questions and comments, I did create a post-conference social space in Remo after closing remarks today, so that if you did want to come and talk a little bit more, I'm going to be there, and I'm hoping some of our panelists will be there, so we can talk that out. And for those who've been waiting for it, there is our keyword. Tiger is our survey, our code word for this session. As I realize I am typing it into the wrong place. There's our URL as a reminder in the chat, and it is Tiger again. And I wanted to point out that I love our panel because we are all people from very geographically somewhat similar areas. We're kind of all in the north central area of the United States, but we all have different roles in our libraries and have had different experiences over the last 6 months. And I wanted to make sure that everyone knew all of our stories are different. And I am going to reply really quickly. Beth Posner asked me who's doing my job now. And honestly, I'm not 100% certain. I believe my direct supervisor who is the systems librarian, and I don't know how he's finding the time to do it. I really don't. It was a full time, it was 20 to 25 hours of my week to do Interlibrary alone. So on that note, you're welcome to go ahead and leave. Just remember to grab your keyword of Tiger, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes, because Johannes and I have to go and prep ourselves for the Q&A for the lightning rounds. Thank you, and I am going ahead and stop sharing recording.